abstract brainwaves. Game genie in a beanie, we ain't on the same stage, leveled up. The epitome of technique, can't survive in my current thought.
Other yellow hat guy here, back with another video. Now, a while back we talked to Will Smith, and everybody by now, I would say living or dead, has heard about the slap, right? Hyperbole, obviously, but basically it has put Will Smith in an awkward position, because what I said when I talked about him and that ordeal at the Oscars was that it really probably wasn't about Chris Rock. So Chris Rock made a stand-up special finally addressing the issue. He told us a while back that he'll talk about it, but it's going to be where he gets paid to talk about it, right? So Chris Rock has had some pretty good stand-up specials. Not everything he says I agree with, right? They're comedians. You're not going to agree with everything that they say. But what he does is point out things that are obvious, but in a way that you never thought about, especially when it comes to race and relationships. Those are kind of the things he has a niche on in his commentary. So he decided to name this latest special Selective Outrage. The problem with the special for me was he was having selective outrage himself. A lot of the things that he would criticize people for being outraged about one thing and not another. You could point the camera lens at so many different people or processes or whatever and say, well, then you've got to be outraged about every little thing, right? So, do I feel sorry for Chris? Do I have any sympathy for Chris? Now, here's the thing. By now, over a year later, you should say, well, he should have got over that. But you can't tell somebody how to feel, right? And he's probably been working on this for a while. The thing is, he really didn't even address Will Smith for the whole special, right? He kind of teased at it, and then the last couple of minutes did it, and then it just went nowhere. Now, he's his own man, he's his own person. What I would have liked is it could have been a teachable moment to say, you know what, I forgive Will Smith. I realize it wasn't about me, and it shouldn't have happened, and that's why I chose not to fight back. The reality is Chris wanted to say, hey, this guy's bigger than me, I was going to fight back, and I wasn't going to embarrass myself. And that it's clear that he's hurt that Will chose to attack him when there's so many other people saying the same stuff about Will, and he felt like, well, why didn't you go after them? You selectively went after me, but not these other people. But these other people also didn't talk about Will at the Oscars, right? They talked about Will on their own platforms, where Will either isn't aware of those platforms or isn't going to march all the way up there to deal with those guys on their turf. They didn't talk about him or his wife, for that matter, in front of millions of people on national TV. Sure, millions of people watch these interviews and things and vlogs on the internet, but it's not the same lasting impact, right? It's not going to be covered by people who, by and large, don't know Will Smith. So I can understand why at that moment you're a little more upset and selective with your outrage, to quote Chris, than you would be in other situations, right? So I say that to say, I wish Chris would have done that differently, right? Chris knows what it's like to be in situations where you've done the wrong thing and you want to move forward, but instead a year later, here you go, dragging Will back into this. It was a little over the top for me. I wish he would have. Let me try to move this up. I feel like that could be higher, but it's not. I'm trying to get myself in the frame. Not quite get myself in the frame. Apologies, but yeah, that's what I would have wanted to have happened. So, on one hand, you shouldn't put your hands on anybody, especially over words. You should only be putting your hands on people to defend yourself, and as you get older, it's easier to come to terms with that. When you're younger, you're hot-headed, you don't have that wisdom that I'm putting into you right now. But it felt kind of shady for me to see him try to capital. Like if he would have made this special 3 months after, okay, 6 months kind of stretching it, but a year later, in Jada Pinkett Smith's hometown, you go to wherever it was in Maryland or whatever. That's a little that's too much. It's too much. But I guess for him, he still felt defensive because somewhere somebody is like, hey, don't make me smack you like Will did. All right, so I get that part of it too. But by and large, most people were on his side already. You know, it was just very grandiose and pretentious of him to have Paul McCartney, Jerry Seinfeld, all these guys praising him, you know, kissing his butt pretty much. And then to come up with a somewhat mediocre special. I'm sorry. I went back and watched Bring the Pain and Bigger and Blacker. But this new special doesn't compare to those, in my opinion. I think those other ones I enjoyed more. Obviously, they weren't marred by, you know, a timely situation that's going on, as bad as this one is. Obviously, there's things in those that, you know, dealt with the current topics, but they still hold up. I'm not sure that this new special is going to hold up as well. So I think I've rambled long enough. And I wanted to put that out there because on one hand I could have done a sympathy for Chris Rock, or I'm sorry, for Will Smith part 2, but I decided to spin it and say Chris Rock because clearly he's going through some stuff too. Fresh off a divorce, which, you know, he acknowledges his wrongs in that, right? Nobody's perfect in a marriage. And when a divorce, there's, you know, always, you know, one person didn't do this or one person did do this, you know, that factors into it, so he should understand kind of what's going on with Will. Now in his defense, he said, hey, I only talked about it because, you know, you guys get up on the internet and talk about it. By you guys, I mean Jada and Will have that red talk table, really it's Jada, where she put her business on blast, so it's not like it was a personal thing if you wish to go ahead and share it like that anymore. It's not personal where it should be private. You made it public. So for him to put his opinion out there, it's kind of like somebody on Facebook telling you to mind your business and not comment on their wall on something that they put public. That's not how it works. You didn't want it out there, you just don't put it out there, right? Or maybe you keep it to where your settings are set for only those who you want to know. But it's really, when people do that, they're really just looking for someone to listen, not really for solutions. They've already thought of the solutions or don't want to hear it. They're not ready for that right now, right? So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Let me know you guys' thoughts. Do you feel any sympathy for Chris Rock, or do you think he's fine? Or what do you think's going on there? We got somebody else that I'm also questioning how people feel, because what I try to do, I try not to do these immediately, right? I try to let more details come out before I state my piece. And this next one, stay tuned for that. The Yellow Hat Guy is out. Captain Sensation!